In the early 24th century BC, Mesopotamia was a patchwork of rival city-states, Uruk, Ur, Lagash, Kish, each ruled by its own ensi or governor. Into this fractious landscape stepped Sargon of Akkad, whose origins remain shrouded in legend. According to later chronicles, he began life as a humble cupbearer in Kish's court, an unremarkable palace attendant entrusted with tasting the king's wine for poison. Yet Sargon's sharp mind, political ambition, and military acumen would carry him far beyond the gullet of royalty into the annals of empire. Around 2340 BC, Sargon led a bold rebellion in Kish, winning over the palace guards to overthrow the city's ruler. Once in power, he consolidated control over neighboring Sumerian cities through both diplomacy and force. In short order, he marched on Uruk and Ur, installing loyalist governors and marrying into local elites to cement his rule. By co-opting existing temple institutions and revering native deities such as Inanna and Enlil, he avoided the kind of religious backlash that fractious successions often provoked. Having secured central Mesopotamia, Sargon then struck north and east into Akkadian-speaking territories, moving his capital to a newly founded city, Akkad. From this strategic hub on the Euphrates, he built an unprecedented logistics network. Standardized weights and measures to facilitate trade, well-maintained roads and way stations to speed messengers and armies, and royal storehouses stocked with grain, copper, timber, and lapis lazuli. His armies, drawn from diverse subject peoples, marched in coordinated phalanxes of spearmen, archers, and charioteers, wielding bronze weapons and early iron blades that gave them a tactical edge. Sargon's innovative approach to governance blended centralized bureaucracy with local autonomy. City-state rulers kept their thrones but paid annual tribute, supplied manpower for imperial works, and swore loyalty oaths on clay tablets sealed with cylinder seal icons. These measures fostered a sense of shared identity across a vast swath of territory stretching from the Zagros Mountains to the Mediterranean's fringes. By the twilight of his 30-year reign, Sargon's domain encompassed virtually all of southern and central Mesopotamia, the world's first true empire. He emblazoned his achievements on victory steels and dedicatory inscriptions. Temples rebuilt from their foundations, canals widened for the welfare of future generations, and enemies humbled before the greatness of Akkad. His unlikely ascent from palace servant to sovereign of the four corners of the world established enduring precedents in statecraft, imperial administration, and the fusion of military might with religious sanction, legacies that would echo through Mesopotamian history for centuries to come. After subjugating Sumerian city-states, Sargon of Akkad recognized that sustaining such an expansive realm required more than military prowess. It demanded a new administrative center purpose-built for imperial governance. Thus arose Akkad, strategically situated on the Middle Euphrates. Though its precise archaeological location remains debated, textual sources paint a vivid picture. Wide processional boulevards, temple precincts dedicated to Enlil and Anu, and colossal palace complexes housing scribes, treasurers, and foreign emissaries. To staff this capital, Sargon recruited talent from across his domains. He established a royal bureaucracy organized into departments: grain, timber, metals, tribute, and foreign relations, each overseen by a high official whose authority derived directly from the king. Clay tablets from Akkad's archives record meticulous inventories. Barley rations dispersed to temple workers, copper ingots shipped north from Anatolia, and lapis lazuli shipments arriving from distant Badakhshan. Standardized cuneiform script was taught in centralized scribal schools, creating a core of professional record keepers who sealed letters with personalized cylinder seals, a practice that became a hallmark of Akkadian administration. Sargon's government also innovated in taxation. Rather than relying solely on ad hoc levies, the empire imposed an annual tribute system proportional to each region's agricultural and pastoral capacity. Governors appointed in each province maintained local granaries and stockpiles of livestock, remitting standardized shares to Akkad while retaining a portion for local stability. This fiscal predictability funded infrastructure projects. Canals widened to improve irrigation, roads paved with gravel to speed messenger relays, and fortified depots positioned at caravan crossroads. Diplomacy likewise formed a pillar of Akkadic governance. Sargon sent envoys bearing gifts: cedarwood from Lebanon, precious metals from the Gulf, exotic resins from the Levant, to forge alliances or secure neutrality among peripheral polities. Treaties were inscribed on clay tablets and deposited in temple sanctuaries, where both divine and secular audiences bore witness. In several border regions, Sargon allowed local rulers to remain in place under Akkadian suzerainty, creating buffer zones that reduced administrative burdens while extending imperial influence. The cumulative effect was transformative. By institutionalizing bureaucracy, standardizing measurement and record-keeping, and linking diverse populations through tribute and diplomacy, Akkad emerged not just as a capital city, but as the nerve center of the first true empire in human history. Sargon's innovations laid the groundwork for subsequent Mesopotamian states. Under Sargon's successors, particularly Rimish and Manish-Tushu, the Akkadian Empire reached territorial heights scarcely imagined before. Military expeditions swept north into the Zagros, east across the Iranian plateau, west into Syria and the Levant, and south to the Gulf's trading ports. Unlike the earlier city-state raids, these campaigns were highly organized, employing conscripted infantry divisions, chariot detachments, and naval vessels on marsh waterways. Texts celebrate Manish-Tushu's conquest of Meluhha, while Rimish's annals boast victories over Elam and marshalling rebellions along the Zagros frontier. Each campaign served dual purposes: collecting tribute in grain, metals, and luxury goods, and securing trade arteries, essential for the flow of Anatolian copper, Lebanese cedar, Egyptian gold, and distant gemstones. Military colonies were established in strategic outposts, manned by mixed contingents of Akkadian veterans and local levies, ensuring permanent imperial presence. However, militarism was only one facet of Akkad's zenith. Cultural exchange flourished as artisans, merchants, and scribes moved along these newly secured routes. Cylinder seals carved in Akkad's workshops bear motifs blending Sumerian iconography, winged bulls and divine symbols, with Syrian stylistic flourishes. Royal inscriptions in both Sumerian and Akkadian languages promoted a vision of heavenly mandated kingship that transcended ethnic divisions. Religious syncretism accompanied this exchange. The Temple of Enlil in Nippur remained a ceremonial center, but deities like Ishtar of Nineveh and Shamash of Sippar gained prominence through Akkadian patronage. Ritual calendars and festival practices evolved to incorporate local traditions. For instance, the Syrian Feast of Palms merged into Mesopotamian New Year celebrations in cities like Mari. Urban craft industries boomed. Metallurgists in Akkad produced bronze tools stamped with royal emblems. Potters created standardized bevel-rim bowls, found as far afield as the Indus Valley. Textile workshops in Umma wove garments of high quality, wool dyed with imported matter, while medical practitioners compiled pharmacopoeias incorporating herbs from across the empire. At its height, approximately around 2300 BC, the Akkadian Empire represented a crucible of military might, administrative sophistication, and cultural synthesis. These dynamics bound disparate populations into a shared imperial framework and set enduring precedents. Mobile armies under central command, professional scribes shaping state narrative, and sacred kingship legitimized by both conquest and cosmopolitan patronage. Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, presided over the empire's apogee and signaled a dramatic evolution in Mesopotamian rulership. His reign is best known for proclaiming himself Sarkasadim, which means King of the Four Quarters, and declaring divine status, becoming the first Mesopotamian monarch to adopt the title, Ilu. The famed victory stele of Naram-Sin vividly depicts him ascending a mountain, trampling fallen enemies, and wearing the horned crown of divinity, a potent symbol blending martial triumph with cosmic sanction. To cement his theocratic authority, Naram-Sin elevated the cult of the god Dagon alongside Ashur and Enlil. He constructed temples dedicated in his own name at key sites, Sippar, Nippur, and Akshak, ensuring that his visage was co-worshipped with traditional deities. This sacralization of monarchy transcended earlier models where kings served as high priests. Now the king himself occupied divine status, a living intermediary between humankind and the heavens. Militarily, Naram-Sin expanded Akkad's borders into the Levant, subduing regions as far west as the Taurus Mountains. He famously put down the Lalubi uprisings in the Zagros, as immortalized in rock reliefs at Sinai, where he is shown smiting foes with a mace and spear. His campaigns combined siegecraft, ramming stone walls, and scorched earth tactics. Fields burned, canals diverted, and prisoners deported to break local resistance. Yet this unprecedented centralization came at a cost. By intertwining religion and monarchy so closely, Naram-Sin's divine kingship destabilized traditional priestly hierarchies, provoking tensions in temple communities. Provincial governors, accustomed to semi-autonomous rule, grew uneasy under a god-king who claimed absolute authority. Economically, sustaining constant military campaigns and temple endowments strained tribute flows. Contemporary letters mention late grain payments and protestations from distant provinces. Nevertheless, Naram-Sin's architectural patronage flourished. City walls at Akkad and Sippar were rebuilt at grand scale, and palace complexes featured monumental gateways adorned with reliefs proclaiming his divine mandate. Ultimately, Naram-Sin's legacy is twofold. He epitomized imperial grandeur by merging godhead with kingship, setting a precedent that would echo in the pharaohs of Egypt and later Mesopotamian dynasties. But his aggrandizement also sowed seeds of dissent, contributing to the empire's vulnerability to internal revolt and external incursion. Following Naram-Sin's illustrious reign, the Akkadian Empire began exhibiting signs of systemic strain. Internal revolts erupted in distant provinces, Elam, Gutian, and Mari, where local rulers seized on weakening central authority. Insurrectionary tablets from Umma and Nugur record tax refusals and declarations of independence, while palace correspondence in Akkad's archives laments late tribute shipments of barley and copper. Concurrently, paleoclimatic data points to an abrupt reduction in rainfall circa 2200 BC, plunging southern Mesopotamia into a protracted drought. Without ample river flooding, irrigation canals silted up and agricultural yields plummeted. Soil salinization, a byproduct of centuries of irrigation without adequate drainage, further degraded farmland. Temple estates, long the backbone of grain redistribution, faced empty storehouses, sparking food shortages and civil unrest in urban centers. Economic documents confirm soaring commodity prices. The price of grain in Ur skyrocketed, while prices for sheep and cattle collapsed as pastoral communities overran irrigated fields in search of forage. Merchant caravans avoided devastated regions, cutting off vital trade in copper and timber. The flow of exotic goods that once symbolized imperial prosperity dwindled to a trickle. Faced with rebellion and famine, central authorities resorted to punitive expeditions, burning rebellious towns and deporting populations en masse, a tactic that further impoverished local economies. Letters from the court describe emergency rations being rushed from heartland storehouses, only to be intercepted by bandits operating along lawless stretches of road now left undefended. Compounding the crisis, the death of Sargon's successors led to rapid turnover on the throne, with short-lived reigns and palace coups fracturing political cohesion. Without a stable leadership able to coordinate relief efforts and quell unrest, the empire's far-flung provinces slipped beyond Akkad's control. By 2180 BC, the cumulative toll of revolt, climate disaster, and economic collapse had shredded the administrative and military fabric that Sargon had so carefully woven. The once unstoppable juggernaut was teetering on the brink of total disintegration. Amid this perfect storm, the Gutians, mountain tribes from the Zagros foothills, exploited Akkadia's vulnerabilities. Initially hired as mercenaries against Elamite rebels, Gutian warbands soon turned on their employers, launching raids on undefended villages and smaller cities. Contemporary Sumerian laments invoke Gutian yoke as a curse, describing the invaders as line cutters who uprooted date palms and decimated livestock. By 2150 BC, Gutian chieftains had seized Akkad itself, forcing the remaining royal line to flee to refuge cities like Umma and Nippur. In Akkad's ruins, archaeologists find conflagration layers, burnt mud brick and smashed cylinder seals, evidence of systematic destruction. Gutian rule witnessed the collapse of central bureaucracy. Canals fell into disrepair, scribal schools closed, and temples ceased to distribute rations. Administrative texts vanish. Where Sargon's archives once kept daily records, only fragmentary economic receipts remain. The standardized weights and measures dissolved as local communities reverted to ad hoc systems. Coinciding with Gutian invasion, graffiti from Eridu proclaims, "The king has perished, and the land mourns," capturing the collective trauma. Gutian domination proved short-lived yet decisive. They ruled in fragmented fashion, failing to restore order or invest in infrastructure. Without central authority, famine and banditry intensified. By 2120 BC, native Sumerian governors, led by Ur-Nammu of Ur, mobilized resistance, rallying forces that expelled the Gutians and founded the Third Dynasty of Ur. Thus ended the Akkadian chapter. Their empire, once a marvel of centralized rule, collapsed under the weight of environmental collapse, internal revolt, and opportunistic invasion. Yet the Gutian interlude itself underscores the fragility of early imperial systems when they outpaced their logistical foundations. Although the Akkadian Empire disintegrated, its institutional innovations echoed through subsequent Mesopotamian polities. Ur-Nammu's Third Dynasty of Ur consciously emulated Akkadian administrative patterns, re-establishing centralized treasuries, standardizing tribute quotas, and employing royal envoys. Their law code, the Code of Ur-Nammu, borrowed clauses from earlier Akkadian legal practice. Provincial governance in the Third Dynasty of Ur recapitulated Akkadian streamlined bureaucracy. Governors oversaw grain storage, temple maintenance, and labor levies, an explicit nod to Sargon's model. Scribal training likewise revived cuneiform schools that taught both Sumerian and Akkadian languages, ensuring continuity in diplomatic correspondence. Artisans in Neo-Babylonian and Assyrian eras adopted Akkadian motifs, winged bulls, goddess Lamassu, and heroic relief scenes, blending them into new stylistic syntheses. The concept of divine kingship, first formalized by Naram-Sin's horned crown, persisted in Assyrian and Babylonian royal inscriptions, where rulers claimed direct descent from gods. Infrastructure too bore Akkadian fingerprints. Canal networks originally laid out under Sargon were cleared and expanded by later dynasties, underpinning agriculture for another millennium. Roadside way stations and relay systems persisted, enabling the Persian Achaemenids to adopt them for imperial communication. Even in literature, Akkadian legacy endured. The Epic of Gilgamesh, compiled in the Third Dynasty of Ur scribal schools, drew on Akkadian-era versions, preserving flood narratives and heroic exploits that would influence biblical and classical texts. Thus, while the Akkadian Empire itself collapsed, its blueprint for imperial governance, centralized administration, standardized bureaucracy, professional armies, and divine kingship became the foundation upon which later Mesopotamian and Near Eastern empires built. In forging the First Grand Empire, Akkad cast a long shadow across centuries, proving that though polities fall, their institutional legacies can endure. Thank you for joining Ancient Odyssey on our journey through the rise and fall of the world's first true empire. From Sargon's daring palace coup to the dramatic collapse under Gutian incursions, the legacy of Akkad lives on in every tablet, road, and ruler who followed its imperial blueprint. If you enjoyed uncovering how bureaucracy, military innovation, and divine kingship first fused in Mesopotamia, be sure to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into history's hidden chapters. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep exploring the ancient world beyond the ruins.